The background, just to back up, we were always taught by our parents that you should run for the office you're qualified for. And so I served on the county board for a 4-year period of time, and that was, I think that's the best part of someone's interested in getting involved in government. They should start not commitment at the county board level, because you learn how to work with both sides of the party and learn the process. So I served as 4 years in that, and at times, being in the minority, I believe there were 6 Democrats at the time. I was a Democrat, and there were times where the votes went 28-1. But it's important to be able to express your opinion, even though you might be in the minority, and stick to your values, and that's what serving the public's all about. So as far as I was in banking for 14 years, when Judy Madonia retired, I thought that'd be a great way to serve the city, because I was concerned who else is going to serve in that role. And since I had 14 years of banking, being treasurer dovetails into the banking industry, because essentially the main role of the treasurer is to make sure you record, you invest the dollars, the tax dollars, on the priority order of safety, liquidity, and rate of return. So, with my banking background, being a certified treasury professional, I brought those skill sets into the treasurer's office, and I was able to make changes with regards to the office and bring a professional atmosphere there. But the important thing was, I thought the key ingredient was changing the treasurer's office to a customer-focused department. Because when I got there, employees, they're all great employees. I met one-on-one with each one of them, and I could have let people go, but during the interview, I asked them, what would you like to see improved? What's your ambitions? And so they seemed all qualified, so I kept them all. But what I taught them was, it's not just about their job, just getting it done, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, balancing the checkbook, but also it's how we interact with other departments, because we're here to serve the public. It's a customer service industry, just like in banking. And so you have internal customers, which are the departments, other departments. Then you have the external ones, which are people that come to our window, and they might view them as people that pay parking tickets, whatever the case may be, but I just view them as customers. And I think any level of government, if people would just, especially the elected officials, stay focused on the intent of the office, serving the public, I think all levels of government would be a lot better off. So why I want to run for mayor is because we're at a crossroads. Springfield, I brought it up in the forum this morning, we have the same issues today that we've had 30 years ago. And for me, as an adult, I don't want my children growing up in the same environment, discussing the same issues over and over again. And I mentioned that we're the home of Abraham Lincoln. We should be the model city with regards to non-discriminatory activities. I mean, people should look to Springfield, Illinois when it comes to race relations. Instead, it's not seen in that type of light. So that's just one piece of it. The other thing is CWLP. The corporate fund has been balanced on the backs of CWLP, and that is our crown jewel. If, God forbid, we ever lost CWLP, it'd be devastating for our community. So as mayor, that's one of my high priorities, is to take care of the utility, go back to our roots, which is to provide affordable and reliable electricity and water to the citizens of Springfield. Back in the late 90s, I still believe CWLP has not recovered from the power marketing scandal, which lost over $50 million. And I think, so that was caused by power marketing, whereby the city utility at that time, to my knowledge, they had options to provide electricity to entities. And so what happened, I believe, is with the rolling blackouts out west, when that market changed, a lot of people came in and they wanted the delivery of power. CWLP couldn't deliver the power. And so there was lawsuits that pursued and ended up costing the utility over $50 million. I don't think the utilities recovered from that. So we fast forward to today, and guess what we're in? The power marketing business. The same thing that we lost $50 million on. So really, you do not want to risk having somebody that does not know about utilities, not looking after the best interests of Springfield, leading our city forward. And those are just a couple of reasons why I want to run. But the main thing is how I've always run my office and just handled things in general, even in banking. You treat everybody the same. You do what's best. I mean, that's what it comes down to. When I make a decision as mayor, I'm going to get as much information as possible. That's why when Bernie calls me, he says, "What's your opinion on consolidating the Oak Ridge Cemetery?" Well, it depends on the information available. You want to get as much information as possible together and then make an informed decision what's best for Springfield, because that's how my decision's going to be made. It's not going to be made on getting reelected or moving up the political ladder. It's always been, as treasurer, it has been what's the best decision to make based on the information provided at that time. And that's how I would approach the mayor. What I bring to the table is my ability to get along with others. I work well with others. I've been involved with the community. I can go on, but I look forward to working with the city council, building the level of trust in that, and doing what's best for Springfield moving forward for our children and other families that would come.
What would you say is your sort of management style? Are you a top-down person?
No, I'm more of a bottom-up. I empower people. You can ask my staff if you like, but I allow them, I give them the skills to make decisions. And in city government, what's interesting is information's power in city government. And so, you know, what happens at times is if someone makes a mistake, a lot of times there's a lot of finger pointing going on. And I'm the one where they come and they'll say, you know, if a mistake happens, I'll just say, okay, how can we prevent this from happening again? I mean, that's the issues. You know, it's not the mistake that's made, it's what's causing the mistake. And otherwise, you keep repeating the same mistake. So it's a bottom-up approach. In my economic development plan, I think that's where Springfield's lagging. We are so hungry for business, where we roll out the red carpet, which is good. I use Magro Meats as the example. When Magro Meats came into town, wouldn't it be nice if we had a strategic plan in place where we had individuals that knew the loan programs available, that were certified on that end of things, and then they could, when Magro Meats comes in and they're looking to move to the city, what they would do is, well, over in Stevenson Drive, here's the issues that might arise. You could be there. You have to go to city council, get a zoning change, or whatever the case may be, and outline the financing options. Or we have these other places that might fit your business better. And that's the approach I would take. It'd be a more a coordinated effort with regards to planning. We need to utilize Regional Planning Commission and put those plans in place, working with the city council. On my economic development plan, if you look at city structure, there's no economic development committee. And really, if everybody thinks that's a high priority, you should have a commission. That's why I introduced that would work with the economic development office and that focus. But it would bring in not only the chamber, bring in realtors, the banks. I came from banking, and it wouldn't be just one bank. You try to get all the banks to come together. And that's what it's about, is bringing our community together to work collectively to provide for or accomplish our goals.
Are you in favor of hiring a city planner of the city's budget?
Well, currently there is a city planner, and the main focus is downtown. And what I believe is the resources are already there for planning. I think it comes down to more of a coordinated effort. So that's what I would do, is I would challenge the current planner. I mean, we've worked together. I'm not going to put all my emphasis into one person. I think planning is a community activity. We need to work together to move the city forward as a community, because you could have a great planner or you could have a bad planner. And then what happens is a change of administration. So a new mayor comes in and they're going to put their planner in place. And what it comes down to is moving the community forward. And that's what I said earlier today, is it's not about Jim Langfelder, but if I'm blessed enough to be the mayor, the structure I would put in place, it would not matter who the mayor is, that it's working well, everybody's working together towards these goals. So you're that's the real vision, is moving the city together in a collective manner. Because, Bernie's been around a long time, and he's watched different administrations, And sometimes you take a step forward or two steps back. And what I want to do is create the structure where you just constantly move forward, especially with planning. I mean, you have to. Otherwise, everybody brings their own incentives, their own initiatives to the table. They still could do that, but with regards to economic development, you should have a structure in place where we are proactive and do a community-wide approach to job development.
Who is the city planner you're referring to?
Paul O'Shea.
Paul?
He's like a contractor, or is he full-time?
He's he's contractual. Well, he's full-time, I think. But he gets a monthly stipend, yeah.
Just something on the power marketing. When they built the whole power plant, a lot of the idea was that they would be able to sell power on the open market, and that helps pay the cost and everything else. Are you saying the city shouldn't even be in that business?
No, I'm saying you have to be careful who you allow. Well, as mayor, what I would do differently is we need to get more information to the individuals making the decisions for CWLP, and that is the city council. They did away with the utilities committee. I would bring back the utilities committee as a separate meeting, because think about their budget. I mean, the emphasis should be greater than what it is. And I would put more emphasis on CWLP, as far as I would audit CWLP contracts with regards to wind energy especially, and making sure that we are looking after the best interest of the city with regards to that. But as far as power marketing goes, you need to have the professionalism in place to make sure you are making the right choices. Otherwise, it could be disastrous, as we know from our past history. So you can't have an entrepreneurial general manager of the plant. You want someone that's a professional and maintain the professionalism that's going to look after the best interests of CWLP.
A professional engineer or finance person, because there's different kinds of.
Right.
Because I mean, I know Palazzolo talks about entrepreneurial leader.
Right.
You're saying that's wrong, but if you're doing power marketing, isn't that you need an engineer for that? Is that what you are saying?
No, you would. I believe on the power side, they use the Energy Authority, MISO. They have, and that's what they brought into place to help with that initiative. But as far as the
what's MISO?
It's Midwest Independent Cell. I'd have to look up the
People that operate the grid.
Okay.
So in any event, I think you have to maintain the professionalism of the power plant. You don't want somebody that's playing the power marketing game. That's what happened previously. You want a professional that's doing what's in the best interest of the city. As far as my approach, what I would do is make sure that we have the checks and balance in place to make sure that we are looking after the city of Springfield and not the interests of others.
How well run is CWLP now, in your opinion? Or do you have enough information?
Well, I think you need more information, but the pilot, that's been greatly discussed, and Mayor Davlin did the right thing. He had a blue ribbon panel where he brought in different people of the community to make recommendations to the city council. And I know there'll be a varying opinion on this, but I sat in those meetings. I saw the general manager make the ordinance presentation, and that was presented to the council based on the projections, and the intent was to fund fire and police pensions because they increased the rates of the utility. And that's one of the selling points was, here's how we can address our unfunded liabilities related to the police and fire pensions. So they increased the utility rates. Unfortunately, the projections did not come in as expected. And so what's happened is they just used the money to fund the corporate fund. And that's how it's helped balance the budget. And so as mayor, what I would do is reevaluate the pilot to make sure that if we're not able to fund it for its intended purpose of that increase, I think we should reevaluate it and change it.
Is that what you mean by the corporate fund is balanced on the back of CWLP?
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's other
You
measures.
said it went back quite a while.
There's other measures. They used to, how the city used to do CWLP and the corporate fund, they do twos and froms. They would say, okay, the city side corporate fund did the street works or whatever for the utility, so they would transfer funds back and forth based on that, and they'd have a net for the corporate fund. Well, now they do the percentage of sales. And so, but there are services that CWLP currently supplies to the corporate side, and I think that needs to be reviewed and reanalyzed, because I think there's a better approach to making sure you have better efficiencies and you're not depleting CWP of funds. If they're providing services for the city, then the city should share in that. Corporate funds should share in those costs.
Do you invest in your office the CWLP funds as well as all the other
Right.
corporate funds? And what kind of rate of return have you gotten?
It's not very good right now because we, as far as on the city investments, we're limited on how we can invest. You can't play the stock market or anything of that nature. They're mainly backed by U.S.-backed securities. And so at this point in time, we've maintained it liquid because the long-term investments haven't had a great rate of return. So,
So you just have cash, basically.
right. It's liquid funds. The majority of the funds are in Illinois funds, or, we'll invest in an agency, but we try to ladder those out based on the rate of return.
So there's really not options.
No, not to, right. It's not like the police and fire pensions. Now, police and fire pensions, we have a consultant that makes recommendations, and they can invest in stocks and other investment tools that provide a greater rate of return. But the one thing, when I became treasurer, attended a conference, one of the things they said, well, being a treasurer, you really won't read about them in the paper unless you mess up on an investment, or if you embezzle money, as we've seen in Dixon, Illinois. So fortunately, we've followed the rules as far as investing on the rate of safety, liquidity, and rate of return. Because when the checks come down, how that process works, if the department, Public Works, has a bill to pay, they submit it to the Office of Budget and Management. They make sure the money is appropriated within the budget. They approve it. Then it comes down to our office. We make sure the money's in the bank. That's the liquidity. And then we write the check. And that's how it gets processed.
Local banks?
Yes.
And that's your choice?
It is in city code that they should be in Illinois. Yeah, Illinois banks. But Illinois funds, that's with U.S. Bank right now. They just, right. And it's just the economies of scale as far as the fees charged. It's the best option to go with as far as that goes.
You mentioned police and fire pensions.
Right.
Wondering what your thoughts are on this idea. Should the city be putting as much money as it can find toward the unfunded liability, or should it be a longer-term approach, or how? What are your thoughts on the unfunded?
On the unfunded liability, you should do 100% of. Right now, how they've changed it is you have to be 90% funded. And what we should do is at least put 100%. That way you're making a little ground game each year. So I'd be in favor of doing 100% of the actuarial analysis, what they say, to go into the fund. The other thing I would do is, as far as the unfunded liability, what needs to take place is we need to bring the people together that have an impact on the funds. Right now, how it works is the state legislature, they pass all the benefits. So it's an unfunded mandate is what it is. They pass those mandates to us, and we have to abide by that. The other thing is the city council, of course, they have a role to play because they vote on funding what you're going to appropriate for the funding for the year. And then the pension boards, they have, of course, they oversee the investments of the funds. So they'd have to be at the table. The other side of it is the unions should be involved because they're always lobbying and negotiating. So they should be at the table as well. But what I would do is use Joe McCoy. He was the first individual that really did a report with the Illinois Municipal League on unfunded liabilities. I would have him moderate an open forum, I'd call it a pension summit, in city council chambers where we bring all the entities together and have an open discussion of how to address the unfunded liability. So everybody's in the same boat because as you've seen, or may not have, but what happens is even with the pension boards, it's kind of irritating at times, but when something happens, nobody wants to go answer the call, as far as that goes. So when Alderman McMiniman, he's a great person. I mean, he's been beating that drum for a long time. I mean, you have to hand it to him. So there's a discussion on longevity pay. So on longevity pay with regards to police and firemen's pension. And so there's a dispute on the calculations. I think the police is ending up in the courts to determine how that's going to end up. Well, when that came to being, Alderman McMiniman's, expressing his opinion strongly about the mayor and about the treasurer and their role in all this. And so, I went to the board, I said, well, we should have someone come, the president should come to the city council chamber. Nobody wanted to come. And so there I am, as treasurer, and I went ahead and, I laid it out. Here's what happens. And, the discussion as far as what took place, audits have been done, nothing's been cited. And so really it came down to a dispute of calculating the longevity pay. And so, unfortunately, some of the police officers got caught up in that, where they retired, and that's what's in the courts now. But to me, with union contracts, anything, especially with retirements, if someone is planning their retirement based on the information the city provided, that you have to adhere to that. And so if something's changed, then you better offer that person their job back because they went off on false pretenses. Because, we're there to provide what's allowable by law with regards to retirements, and that's what's been followed. And so if there's a dispute on any calculation as far as that goes, the ones you can always change it after the point in time, but the ones that went off before then, you have to adhere to it because that's just logical.
What's the translation to the corporate fund hit if you go from 90% to 100% fund?
I would have to check. I'd have to check that. So I can get that number for you.
There would be a corporate fund hit.
Right.
And it would be a multi-million
Or it'd be a
hit.
corporate fund appropriation.
Well,
but you have to, that's the thing is,
Well-
when we talk about the dollars, the mayor's right. I mean, and that's the thing that's always discussed at city council. Okay, if you have so many dollars, where are you gonna, it's the pie. How are you gonna split it up? What's your priorities? So that's what it comes down to. And really the basic services for the city, when you think about it, are streets and safety and, providing for individuals in that regards. So as mayor, that would be a priority, is to make sure that we're adhering to the services of the people as much as possible. But I think my management style, I think, would, I'll bring up consolidated garages. It's the right thing to do. That concept has been around for over 20 years, and that was the right move to make. But what I've heard is that the city is not, the city on their purchasing of supplies is paying above the average price that they used to pay when they had control of it. So what I would do is I would audit the NAPA contract to make sure that, analyze it, I shouldn't say audit. I would analyze the NAPA contract to see where our dollar's going, really drill it down to make sure that it's just not NAPA. If NAPA has the supplies, that's set. But from what I'm hearing is if they don't have the supplies, it's the secondary vendor that's upcharging. And so that's what we need to take a look at. Is it really a value to have them in there? And that's what I would do as mayor. Is one of the things I would do is have an analyzation of the costs with regards to supplies related to the centralized garages.
And the garage opened on what day?
The exact day I'm not sure of. Yeah.
December
yeah.
something?
Yeah.
So it's only been in operation for 2
No,
months?
it's but I think they've in full operation. But they've been there prior to that, I believe, from what I've been told. So, but I think that's something you have to look at. I mean, here's the bottom line with regards to government. I mean, just like your business, just like when I was in banking, you don't want to keep going down the same road. I mean, you get set in your ways. It's easy to do. You're just managing. What I want to do is, I always self-critique myself. I was in that forum. I didn't do, I critique myself right after that. And so that's what it's about. You, as a city government, we have to always critique ourselves. What can we be doing better? That's how you grow. And that's what I would do as a mayor, is to critique our operations to make sure that we're as efficient as possible. When we analyze the centralized garages, maybe the numbers come back that everything's fine. But we owe it to ourselves to at least take a look at it to make sure. Because what I've heard, and you hear this all the time, Bernie, you have leads all the time, right? Where somebody says, well, something's going on. I said, well, where's the evidence? So in this situation, what you'd have to go and do is analyze the operations, put the numbers to paper and see what's working well and what's not. And what's not working well will change.
So you mentioned a couple of times this morning and earlier that you'd like to change the culture.
Mm-hmm.
That was the question I was going to ask.
Oh, is that right? So I guess to get that started, and I'll let Bernie have the follow-up.
No.
What, how would you characterize the culture now, and how would you envision it down the road?
That's a good question. As far as now, what I see in city government, at times, not all the time, but at times it's territorial, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be working as one unit, and I'll talk about the centralized database for the city. You should be able to go into the city and find out what you owe the city, and this has been going on for a long time before Mayor Houston took place. But now they finally, ISD, we have our own ISD department. They have developed a program, ARIA, it's the ARIA system for accounts receivables, but that's the centralized database. But not all the departments are welcoming to this logical concept. And so that's one area, is that it's just like I did when I came into the treasurer's office. I showed them how their work impacts other departments, or emphasized it more than what they had. And so, and that's what I would do citywide, because I think all departments should work together to serve the public. That's what it's all about. And there are some areas where I think we'd be able to be more efficient.
One of the candidates, and you'll know who he is, keeps talking about when our kids coming home. Of course, Langfelder family, that's not
we're here.
a problem much. But when you talk about culture, that seems like we'd have to somehow change the whole city. Are you talking about changing the culture of just city government, or is there some broader change that you think you can bring to the city?
Well, I think it's I think you boilerplate. I think it's a bottom-up approach. I think by changing city government, just the philosophy, it's infectious. So it would go out to the community. And we have a great community, don't get me wrong. City workers are good, but I'm just talking about raising the level of our service, because I came from banking as my service, background, and I just analyze things, and I think it can be done better and to serve the public, and that's what it's about. But with regards to race relations, that's what's really irritating, and I mentioned that, but I keep hearing the same thing about hiring. And everybody wants a qualified worker. So part of my economic development plan would be the education aspect. The community I really liked, I looked at different states, Utah, Missouri, and other states, but the community that really caught my eye was Asheville, North Carolina. And they have the target sector, they call them targeted industry sectors. So I changed it to target employment sectors, because what comes down to jobs. And what I know people want me to say, well, what are those sectors? Well, logically, it'd probably be, education. It'd be the medical district. It would be government. But really, it's not a Jim Langfelder plan. It needs to be a community plan. Otherwise, I'm not going to be forcing my ideas on people. I want it to be a collective idea. That's how you get buy-in. I went to management. That's how you get people's buy-in. That's why I met with my employees when I became treasurer, get their ideas. So when I did make changes, they had buy-in, and that's what I would do as mayor, is the same thing. But going back to the education aspect and race relations, we need to have a qualified workforce, more qualified than what we have now, so people, if they choose to just try to find employment after high school, they learn a trade, or if they want to go work at a bank, here's what you need to do. And then if they're going on to post-secondary education, they know what to expect, what they need to do. But the other part of it, I would go to the city. I'd have the city, just like I did in banking. I took the bank to the schools and set up a program where they would learn about different bank jobs. Because at the time, it wasn't just someone behind the desk. We had a chef, we had a marketing person, an HR director. So they went in and taught the children about that position and what it took to be in that role. And so I would do the same thing with the city, so they would know, what it takes to be a fireman, a policeman, working out the power plant, working at Public Works. Being an attorney, or whatever the case, the sky's the limit. But I would form that partnership with the schools, work with Lincoln Land, my alma mater, and Sangamon State, UIS, and then also the trades, the unions, because that's where you need to educate the individuals so you have a qualified workforce. So when you have a worker in jeopardy because they don't know how to do the job, hopefully you have people trained already, so when the opportunity comes, you can place them into those positions, instead of just, and you have a qualified workforce, instead of meeting the numbers. But with regards to city employment, that issue's been going along for decades. But what I would do is something similar to my banking days in CRA, what we did is we always did a second review of applicants, and that's what we would do here is job applications. If there is a similar qualifications for minority compared to a non-minority that's being considered for the job, you would compare the two to make sure they're treated fairly, and then make sure that you'd have that review committee that would take a look at that review and make sure you have a fair process with regards to hiring at the city of Springfield.
So aside from hiring and employment and job opportunities, what other issues do you see in Springfield when it comes to race relations? And as a lifelong Springfield person, why have we not been able to move forward? And how, as mayor, can you change it?
Well, I think in a way it's territorial. I think unfortunately that's one part, but the other part is trust. You have to build that level of trust. And when I was in banking, I went into John Hay homes, and I wasn't welcome the first couple times. You had to build that level of trust. You had to earn it. And so, as mayor, that's the greatest impact you have, is they know you're sincere, they know you're real, you're passionate, and because you are the leader of this city. And so you have to build that level of trust, but when you have the city council not trusting the mayor, that's an issue. And so you have to have it in all spectrums, just not, you have to have the city council's trust, you need to have the community's trust. But with regards to how we can grow as a community is, I think the right approach is being done now. You have individuals that are discussing it, but we've done that for a long time. Other mayors have done that, the circles and things of that nature. But we need to take it to the next level. It was interesting, the Ward 2 debate. Someone brought it up. One of the aldermanic candidates said that until you make that area safe, nobody's going to want to locate work there. And, that's an aspect that really hadn't been talked about a lot. So really it comes down to the basics of humanity. You want shelter, safety, and then jobs, and provide everything. So as a city leader, what I would do is do whatever I could to change that aspect. And maybe it's just perception, but perception's reality. So what we need to do is make sure that the perception everywhere in the city is safe. We're welcoming. We get along with each other. And we work together to do what's best for Springfield. And that's the philosophy I'll bring to the mayor's office.
What's your opinion of the work that's being done by the city's diversity council in that regard?
I think it's a good step. I agree with, I think it's Alderman Simpson or maybe Turner, that they should have someone outside the city being part of it. I mean, growing that council, because right now it's all internal. So I think it needs to be broadened. But, really, when it comes to race relations, they've been talking about, when I was in banking, the Springfield Urban League had Achieving the Dream Luncheon. That was sponsored by our bank. Well, my dad was mayor. The same thing came up, about race relations, minority hiring and all that. So you fast forward to today, and it's about the same. And so really, we need to raise it to the next level. And I think changing the culture of the city, that's what I'm talking about, city government per se. If you start there and building the level of trust within and working better together to serve the public, I think it'll be infectious to go out and build the credibility within the community.
Well, you had mentioned trust several times.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do specifically to improve that?
As far as with the city council, what I would do is meet with, I have an open door policy right now as the treasurer, and everybody's comfortable. I believe you can ask them, but they're comfortable with me. Or when the media calls, if I have information available, I will provide it as long as it's public information. I don't make them go through the FOIA requests. So I would, make it information available as much as possible. And then the other side of it, not only working one-on-one, but also working with each alderman, develop a strategic plan for their wards. So you go into the wards, you get their feedback from the community, and develop a plan together. And then, because that's just one piece of it, the difference between the commission form of government and the aldermanic form of government is with the commission form of government, you had commissioners that were in charge of the whole city. So you had someone that emphasized the whole city. Well, with the aldermanic form, they're all emphasizing their ward, rightfully so, But what we're missing is the disconnect to bring it all together for a city plan, a community-wide city effort. So it's not, we'd have a strategic plan for each ward, and that's why the importance of the retreat, annual retreat with the city council, and be open to the public, because it has to be. So you'd have that annual retreat, and that's what you would do is develop the overall plans for the city of Springfield and see how each ward fits into that plan. And then you move forward together.
And what about the community?
They would be,
I know you're hoping for sort of a trickle-down effect, but
they would be part of the plan on the in each ward. They would be part of that. You know, from the ward aspect, you're developing a ward plan, so the neighborhood associations would be involved. And what's good is Bruce Strom, I don't know if you remember this, he did the Council of Neighborhood Associations, and he brought all the neighborhood associations together. I think it was in the 90s or something. And that's what you need to do. Is Icon's done it to a degree, but you know they have their interest because it's older historic neighborhoods. But what we should do is have all the neighborhoods working together on that aspect, because nothing's more influential than having a group come up to city council and sway the opinion of the alderman. That's how it works. But you would have the neighborhoods or the community, everybody, they'd be open meetings. You know, with regards to the wards, it's to the alderman's best interest to have everybody's input, and it'd be an open meeting with regards to that.
with regards to transparency,
Mm-hmm.
would that attitude also include immediate staff that you have, and how would you encourage that?
As far as what I'm doing now, you mean?
No, if you were mayor.
How I would do it differently than what it's now? As far as transparent, it goes back to FOIA. I think, you know, we're here to serve the public. I think, you know, people are saying they're bogged down now. You know, police departments, corporation council, they're bogged down because they have to fulfill all these FOIA requests. Well, to me, you know, if someone calls up, I do it now with reporters. If they want information, it's available. It's public information. I provide it. You know, there's no sense in having to fill out a FOIA request. But if there's an issue where, you know, it's confidential or something of that nature, what I do then is I send it to Corporation Council, make sure that it's taken care of through the FOIA process. But, you know, if it's public information, that's, you know, you make it available.
The mayor today at the forum said he's like overseeing 1,450 employees, and you're overseeing 12.
Mm-hmm.
As if to say
Mhm.
that what makes you ready to do 1,450 or whatever it is.
Well, I don't think he's overseeing that many directly. That's one. But as a matter of fact, I might be overseeing more than he does directly. And it comes down to the quality of the workers. They're all good workers, you know. Well, I shouldn't say they're not. You know, I'm sure there's some that are, some that aren't. But for the most part, the majority are good workers. And then as far as managing them, that's the race, the election. I've had this question asked, what director you're going to put in, or are you going to lay people off at CWLP? And I say the election is not about that. It's about what the mayor brings to the table as far as their governing philosophy. And I always go back to how I approached the treasurer's office. I had people, a lot of advisors before I went in say, you need to get rid of this person or that person. Well, I went in and I, you know, for my management style, I met with them and learned from them, and they were all good people, so I kept them. And so what I would do is challenge city workers to raise the level as far as efficiency, and glean from them suggestions on how they can improve the services. That goes back to the Napa contract. That's not my idea. I mean, that's somebody that's bringing me or sharing information that we just need to prove out. But that's what we need to do. We need the individuals, going back to my philosophy on whether or not right now they see employees, if something happens, there's a problem. What happens is there's retribution, or, you know, that person gets in trouble. What we need to do is, how do we prevent this from happening again? That's what it's about, is how do we change our process to make sure it's corrected? You know, what the employees see now is you have the inspector general. I mean, now it's like a witch hunt almost. And what we should be doing is we should be working together to provide solutions. I mean, I'm not in favor of the inspector general. I think it's another layer of bureaucracy. I think if you had a level of trust with the alderman and the city council, it would never came into play. And, you know, so hopefully the new city council, if I'm fortunate enough to be mayor, we don't have to go that. What we want is the city employees working together with the city council and the mayor to provide services to the city. That's what it boilerplates down to, as best as possible.
I think I've heard you indicate you might be willing to undo or not continue the wind contract whenever that's up. When is that up, and is that, am I correct?
I believe it's well, there's probably some green initiatives that are tied to, that's what, you'd have to have all the information possible. And I believe it's up in 2018. I'd have to verify that though. So that's what you'd do, is take a look at the wind contract. The pricing's changed from what we've heard, and so we need to analyze that and see if we can renegotiate that contract.
Because it does fund some city services, right? Solar, something or other.
So
Well, the wind.
rebates on
And then that's the, you know, I can get on my soapbox about energy, but, you know, we are the greatest provider of coal energy. I mean, but the wind, you can't, it's only when it's blowing, you know, it's not like, that's the backup. You know, California is looking to go 100% green energy, but you know what their backup is? Coal. You know, so if there's no energy being provided, they're going to rely on coal. And, you know, I think in government, you have to strike a balance. You know, what's the balance? What's the correct balance for green initiatives and coal? But you can't just say we're not going to have coal power plants. It's not logical in my mind.
Can you elaborate on the adaptive reuse ordinance for downtown that you're espousing?
That Los Angeles was the entity I looked at, but that was what happens now. It's more affordable for developers to build new or rehab a newer building than it is the downtown older structures. So what you would do is take a look at the as far as the parameters in place when you do remodels and what's really needed to provide that service or that I guess that business. What do they really need to what modifications do they have to have, and how can we efficiently move them through the process so it isn't a bureaucratic red tape that, you know, drains resources.
Doesn't that lower some of the standards for
And you still,
rehabs?
well, that's what they do is still maintain the health and safety standards. But you know, what you're trying to do is seeing what's acceptable, and how you would make sure that the process isn't bureaucratic. I'll give you an example. The Land Surveyors Museum. That was a project that was approved by the city of Springfield. You know, went through the whole approval process. Well, before they were to open, they said you have to put in a new sprinkler system. And so my content would be if the city signed off on it, everybody signed off on it, that they shouldn't have to put in a sprinkler system at $100,000. I mean, they had to do that, and that's probably why the museum's not there. So it goes back to taking a look at our operations. When a project is approved by the city, it's okay to move forward. We shouldn't be going back in and saying, well, now you have to do this, even though, you know, you've already approved it.
Isn't the sprinkler system part of that safety? If you got
I think,
kids coming in?
well, that part of the time, I'm not sure what the agreement was. But what happened is if the city signed off on it, you'd have to take a look at it and say, well, someone made a mistake. Is it the individual, they have to pay $100,000 now or is there some remedy to make it work? And that was a TIF-funded project, and it goes into TIF. And you could go up to at least 33%. I'm not sure what it went up to. But my direction as mayor, it wouldn't be Jim Langfelder's projects, or, you know, I'm not going to give the say-so to the city council. I would have under my Community Development Finance Commission, part of it would be a TIF advisory committee. And what I would do is coordinate TIF activities. It goes to the strategic plan for the city. You know, we have all these little TIF districts. And what we should do is have a coordinated effort. So if business comes into town, we should say, well, you can locate over here for this TIF or whatever fits best. I mean, we should be showing them where they fit best into the community and makes it easier for them. But the other part of it is you would prioritize TIF projects and what makes the most sense. And so you would have the school board or the school district should have a seat at the table because they're impacted by TIF more than anybody, as much as the city is. So you should have the entities that are impacted at the table along with developers, realtors, bankers, working together to bring forward the projects that make the most sense.
By the way, is Bob Church a part of, he's working with you on the campaign, isn't he?
A little bit, yeah. But that's just one example I've seen. But I've heard it. Right. But I've heard from others the same situation. Businesses, they get their projects approved, and then an inspector, it might be a fire inspector, it might be electrical inspector. An inspector comes in and says, "Well, you got to change it this way or that way," and they're not in sync. And what I would do is make sure that the business permit process for the city of Springfield is in sync. So it wouldn't matter what inspector you're talking to, you're hearing the same regulations. As far as that goes, that's a high priority, and that goes back to the business information center. We have to have a center for businesses and developers so they can be provided information as far as financial information or permit, what the necessary means are for the permitting process, all in one entity, and that would be driven through the Office of Economic Development.
We are running out of time. Go ahead.
When it comes to economic development, all of the candidates have been talking a lot about the need for that and job creation. But one thing I haven't really heard addressed is how you kind of balance that with the aging infrastructure,
right,
specifically the sewer system. Obviously, increased development will put more stress on that, and it's very expensive to fix. So how do you encourage development but also address those issues?
That's the invisible problem. It's underground. So what I would do is work with the sanitary district and see if there's a way we can join together and best remedy the sewer situation. But the other side of it is, same with the school district, is how you address it is with development, because if you develop more areas, it brings greater tax dollars, greater resources, property taxes to dilapidated areas that aren't generating property tax dollars like we'd like them to. So that's part of it. We would hopefully develop other areas that need it as far as stressed areas. There's areas all over the community as far as north side, east side, downtown that if you do redevelop those, you not only help with the revenue situation, but also with the school district and help their bottom line as well.
We have run out of our 45 minutes.
Darn it.
Is there anything we didn't address?
But one point I would like to make is the Efficiency Commission. They sent me an invitation and 2 initiatives I did introduce, and when you get invited, you should come and share your thoughts. So 2 initiatives were, one was Capital Township, and I said we should at least take a look at it because Capital Township borders the city of Springfield identically. And how I knew that is because when I used to play at SRD, softball with Springfield Recreation Department, which used to be with the city, they asked if you were in Capital Township or not, because that was the taxing body for the city of Springfield. And so that's an area I thought the Efficiency Commission should take a look at. And I'm not saying they're not doing a bad job. I'm just saying we should look at it to see if it makes more sense to provide that through the city of Springfield, or the county. Because take a look at it. But I did get a letter back. And they said, "Oh, they said you're attacking the employees. They're saying they're not doing a good job or not being efficient." I said, "No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we should at least take a look at that." Oh, well, good. Well, you probably heard it then.
This was the old commission.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you were not
So-
on that one?
No.
That's one.
He's not talking about the.
The other aspect was with building permits. I thought we should have a building permit process that's the same countywide. Because then it wouldn't matter, for a developer or a person building a house. Now they got to ask Rochester, or ask Chatham, or ask Springfield, what's your permit, requirements. And what we should do is just have the same building permit countywide. Then that's how you. Then you build up.
Potpourri now
Right.
at both levels.
Right. So I thought it was a good idea,
Does
but
Springfield have more expensive gutter standards than some of the smaller places or rural places?
we'd have to take a look at it. More expensive, I know.
Yeah.
But
So you're not going to get
yeah.
buy-in from the other communities, probably.
well, I'm not talking about. Well, we'd have to come together and have a consensus. So there should be a middle ground, I would think.
So lower city standards.
I'm not saying that. I'd say we take a look at it. What it comes down to is what makes sense. What's the right balance to have? I mean, that's what it comes down to. We all hear about the bureaucratic red tape. It goes back to Joan's question with regards to the adaptive reuse ordinance. what makes sense. You know, otherwise you have buildings sitting there for 30 years unoccupied. I mean, so if it makes sense to change it to a degree to accommodate, it's all about accommodations to a degree. If it makes sense, what's best for Springfield. That's what it goes back to. That's why I always say it's best for Springfield. That's how it should be driven as far as that goes. But I was glad to see hear Governor Ronner. He was touting about the township governments and too many, because we've heard that forever as far as the layers of government. And so, yeah, that's what it's all about, doing what's best for Springfield. That's why I'm running for mayor.